Yes, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today on this kind of sunny Friday morning, I guess. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be contributing to the Southwest cluster. I myself am an original Southwest boy, born and raised in Weston-super-Mare. I think Elliot called it the English Riviera earlier this week on his LinkedIn post. Unfortunately, these days I'm not in the Southwest, but if any of you are fellow Bristol City fans, unfortunately we didn't do so well last night in the football, so we'll park that and we'll leave that there. I work for an organisation called Arctic Wolf. We are one of the largest commercial security operations centres as a service that deliver a global service, and what we're going to run through today is some information from our 2025 threat report, from the threat intelligence and the research that we do, and some trends that we can all take away, and some learnings as well. I'm available on LinkedIn if you want to go and connect with me. Yeah, I'm fairly vocal on social media. So the highlights of this session today will focus on three areas, three big parts of our threat report. Focus on ransomware, data extortion, business email compromise, and then managing and mitigating threats, and then key takeaways and how Arctic Wolf can help you as well. So just to kind of set the scene about who we are and when this information has come from. We are, like I said, we're one of the largest commercial security operations centers globally around the world. We service about 10,000 customers today from all shapes and sizes, from small organizations of 50 users to 100 users, all the way up to, kind of tens of thousands of users globally. We're in kind of private sectors, public sectors, across most of the verticals you can think of. We operate in over 100 countries globally around the world. But one of the key stats that we do here, which I want to focus on, is we respond to about 900 digital forensics and incident response cases per year, predominantly through the cyber insurance industry. So we have a full DFIR organization. And if you have cyber insurance, we're typically on the panels of all of those cyber insurance carriers. And we get parachuted in to do a lot of the forensics work, the ransomware negotiation, the threat actor engagement, and also the restoration work as well. And that's where a lot of this information's come from today that we're going to use. But we are a completely vendor neutral security operations as a service technology. We win loads of awards every single year. What's also really key is we're ingesting a ridiculous amount of data. From our customers, we ingest about 9 trillion security events per week. We use AI and machine learning. That's great, but we also have over 1,000 security practitioners that work here that deliver a human grade service to our customers based on the data that we're mining and monitoring and delivering a service on. So the introduction and the methodology. So this is available online. You can go and download this report today. There is a non-malicious QR code here if you want to go and take it. There's also the link here from our website. We publish reports typically every third of a year. Actually, this week we've just published a new survey, which you can go and download online as well. And we did a webinar on that survey this week. But this is going to be based on the 2025 threat report, based on that incident response data that we've seen from global engagements that we've worked on. So this report deliberately focuses on cyber attacks that have escalated to the point that they've required incident response investigation. By doing this, it allows us to understand the most popular attack types, to help highlight what's really going on in the real world, uncover the techniques, the tactics and procedures that we can take learnings from, to how threat actors evade that detection to pursue that objective that they're trying to do. But also it's taking the holistic approach and taking the learnings to be able to deliver back to the community as well. That's what this is all about. Okay, so the modern landscape in threat research. So there are 6 main types of cyber incident that we saw occur over the past 12 months. But only 3 of those accounted for 95% of all the incident response cases that we responded to. So of course, the major one being ransomware and data extortion. So from all of the 900 plus responses we did, 44% of those involved some form of ransomware, and also the double extortion and data extortion of extraction data from an organization to blackmail them to pay. 27% was something called business email compromise, which is manipulating a user to do something they wouldn't typically do, such as sending payments to a third party that is malicious, or faking, kind of sending a payment to someone that doesn't exist. And then 24% is intrusions. And intrusions really focuses on a threat actor that gets in but doesn't get to the end state of dropping ransomware or doing data extortion. So we saw a significant amount of that where we're able to detect and respond and stop that from happening before that kind of last mile goes on. We still saw insider threat, DDoS, malware infections, data incidents, those kinds of things, but they very much were in the long tail. Now, what was really interesting were there are two main root points of compromises that we saw that accounted for nearly all of the ransomware and data exfiltration incidents. So 92% of all of this essentially came about from external exposure of some sort. And I don't think this is surprising at all to anyone on this call. I hope not anyway, but it's not done through, kind of malicious insiders or blackmail. It was essentially lazy threat actor work by accessing things like remote desktop that was on the public internet, or VMware vSphere kind of management ports that were on the public internet unprotected, or even exploiting some sort of remote firewall or a VPN using a CVE that allowed them to get into kind of some sort of remote access as well. And so the long and short of it ultimately is that most threat actor groups were able to breach most of the organizations from this incident by doing some sort of external exposure technique that allowed them the keys to the castle. So last year, in all the cases that we did, roughly 96% of all of those incident response cases also included data exfiltration. And so what's happening now is that threat actors know that if they come in and they drop ransomware and encrypt operating systems, they encrypt host devices, whatever it may be, they know that we've invested significantly in things like, kind of really, really good immutable backup technology. And data is able to be recovered from those backups. And 68% of the cases, data was able to be recovered. That's all good. However, threat actors now pivot. And so what they do is they exfiltrate confidential data. They exfiltrate potentially, kind of classified data. It might be data that might be kind of really, really sensitive to maybe your competitors, for example. And so even though you can restore from a backup, because they have that sensitive data, the business needs to make a call on what would be the risk to the organization if that data was leaked. And so it's not an IT decision whether you pay the ransom or not. It's always going to be the business and the business leaders at the end of the day, and it's what the risk of that data exfiltration is going to be, and the sensitivity and the confidentiality of it. Only 12% of all those ransomware cases had only the payment of the ransom as the only viable option for recovery. So that's a good piece of news, right? We've got other options to be able to get data back and to do things. But attackers do pivot now because we are now better prepared as organizations. The median from a ransom demand held steady. So year on year, the average ransom demand has been around about $600,000. Now, that doesn't mean that's what people paid, but the initial demand that they asked for was around about 600K, which equates to about, £450,000. Now, what is really interesting, though, is even through all this information, from a survey that we published this week, the UK was still 26% more likely to pay the ransom, even though they can restore from a backup. And that's really interesting because even though you can restore from the backup, people are still paying the ransom, right? There's more likelihood of doing that. And there is a reason why, and primarily it's because the business still chooses that data that's been exfiltrated is just too valuable. It's also that restoring from backups takes an awful lot of time. If you look at the HSE in Ireland, it took them the best part of like 12 months to actually get all their systems back online. It took them 3 months just to get the crucial data back online. So it's really what the time to impact is going to be. And if you're a small and medium business, taking 6 months to restore your environment might mean that you ultimately are going to pay the ultimate price of going out of business. And the other dynamic that goes on here is cyber insurance. So there are many cyber insurance providers now that are very skilled at this, and we work with those cyber insurance providers. cyber insurance providers just want to close the case. And most cyber insurance providers now have this attitude of, we'd much rather pay the ransom and just close the case and be done with this, versus going through all of the legalese and all the work that we have to do and get the data back online, which could be a much more expensive engagement over that period of time versus just paying the ransom and moving on. So it might not be the choice of the business. It might be the choice of your third-party cyber insurance provider as well. So interesting thoughts. So what we found, so in all the IR cases that we worked on, through those cyber insurance providers, 80% of those victims did pay the ransom demand of some sort. But from a Arc to Wolf perspective, if any of our customers got to, kind of a ransom, and, the dirty secret in security is you cannot protect every single threat that happens globally around the world. You just can't. Any vendor that tells you that they protect 100% of attacks, it's complete fallacy. So any of our customers that actually got to any sort of ransom being dropped on any type of host device, only 30% of those engagements actually chose to do anything whatsoever. And that's because the payouts are decreasing globally because of the understanding of the options. And one thing that we're really proud of here at Arc to Wolf in our DFIR organization is that we're really skilled at negotiation with threat actor groups. And there aren't many DFIR organizations that have in-house ransom negotiation. They typically subcontract it out to a third party. We have them in-house. So we were able to reduce the ransom demand by over 64% on average. And that's important because most organizations have an incident response retainer. But does that retainer include ransom negotiation? And if it does, what's the average that you're going to be able to reduce that ransom demand by? And so research in this area is really, really important just to understand what coverage level you're going to get. Because as we've seen from M&S and as we've seen from Harrods and Co-op and everything that goes on at the moment, when you're in the really, really bad position, you need to make sure that you have the best coverage, the best team that are in play right now. And you need to understand how they're going to work. It's so important to do that. So here's just some data about the industries that we saw the average ransom demand. So you can see manufacturing was absolutely the top kind of industry globally around the world that was hit by ransom demands. And the reason why is most manufacturing organizations aren't fully equipped and staffed in cyber resources, typically don't spend a huge amount of money on improving the cyber posture of the organization, might have IoT or OT environments that are operating machinery that are doing things, and a lot of warehouse staff and a lot of processing staff as well. And then you can see healthcare, construction, legal and government, education, and retail, and kind of very much a long tail of others there. So this is really important. So incident response plans and retainers. So we found and we know that most organizations now have an active incident response retainer. And I hope everyone on the call has an IR retainer that in play right now. And it was a 24% increase year over year, which is great. However, most organizations don't maintain and test an incident response plan. And that's important because a retainer is not the same as a plan. You've got to have a full-scale documented plan. You've got to store it off-site. You've got to store it off away from your critical infrastructure and your servers. You've got to test that plan. You've got to run. You've got to run tabletop exercises with all of your business leaders. You've got to get them in the room and understand what an incident would look like and run through that on a scheduled basis. And what we were finding were, from all those organizations, it actually decreases year on year the people that have and maintain that incident response plan. And of those with a retainer, 81% had to use it at least once or more in the last 12 months. So most people that have the IR retainer but aren't investing in security tooling and people and processes are having to rely on that retainer more and more to be able to try and bail them out because we're getting to those sticky situations. So the key takeaway here is an incident response retainer is not the same as an incident response plan. And I encourage you today to just go away and ask the question of what is our retainer? What do we get in that retainer? But also what's our incident response plan? Where is it documented? Where do we store it? Who has access to it? Have you documented how you're going to communicate in the world of an incident? You're not going to be using email and phone and Teams, you're going to be using things like WhatsApp or Signal or something that's completely air-gapped for your environment. Make sure that you have all of that saved. Make sure you do a tabletop exercise to make sure that everyone's best prepared for a threat event. Okay, so business email compromise. This is the second big threat that we're seeing globally around the world. And actually, this is the fastest threat that we're seeing across organizations that are financially adjudicated. So BEC, business email compromise, is growing significantly year on year. So it was 27%, so close to 1/3 of all the incidents last year was some sort of business email compromise. And this is all down to, yes, phishing and human-based manipulation, but it's also based on credential harvesting and credential theft, and also token theft. So you're hearing an awful lot at the moment about employees having their MFA tokens being stolen. And what we saw from the Marks and Spencer incident and the British Library and the MGM case that happened a couple of years ago is the threat actor groups do things like SIM swapping. So SIM swapping, if you have multi-factor authentication or 2FA sent to your phone, if a threat actor group can understand the breached user and get the help desk to reset those credentials or send an MFA push, if they can SIM swap and they have that pushed to a text message or an SMS on their phone, then they've also then got that ability to then log in using that 2FA push within a threat actor group. And the other way that they can do it is just by doing token theft, by creating a malicious Microsoft 365 website that fools users to go and log in again. And when that log in, it does a man in the middle to steal the token. And now they've got a completely highly credentialed login into Microsoft 365 to do things that they shouldn't really be doing. So employee training, credential management, this is where biometrics really do come into their own. So Arc2Wolf, we've moved completely to biometrics. So we don't have passwords. We do biometrics with fingerprinting using Okta, for example. That's kind of how we do our organizational best practices today. And so business email compromise is way more than just account takeover. We're seeing attackers masquerading as CEOs with the authority to transfer funds. We're seeing attackers impersonate lawyers, requesting funds or sensitive data to lower level employees. We've also seen product theft, where a attacker imitates a customer, tricking an organization to do something of a large quantity of product on credit that they may be able to do. And that's where you see the likes of maybe embargoed countries around the world trying to get access to products or technology that they're not allowed to buy. So BEC is a fraud coming in many, many forms, but it absolutely is one of the fastest growing attack surfaces. And we're seeing techniques such as federating with your Teams environment. So if you have external federation switched on within Microsoft Teams, that allows pretty much anyone to federate with you and allow them to impersonate maybe your help desk or maybe someone that's senior, go into a lower level employee and communicating them directly with Teams. Black Basta are very well known to do that. And also, this is what Scattered Spider have been doing with M&S and Co-op as well. So BEC targets organizations and industries which deal with lots of money, that deal with anything that's financially regulated typically. So financial insurance is top, legal and government is second. And then typically we see organizations that, again, are not significantly investing in their security posture, like manufacturing and construction and maybe non-profit as well. Okay, so the third one was kind of managing and mitigating threats. So last year was a really scary year for CVSS vulnerabilities. So last year we had a total of over 40,000 CVEs published from technology providers, third parties, service providers around the world. It's just incredibly hard to keep up with. And so patch management is a real challenging thing to do. And we've completely understand that and realize that it's getting pretty much out of hand, because you can see here the criticals and the highs here really are outnumbering and growing year on year. However, from all of those CVEs of 40,000 that were published, 3/4 of the incidents involved at least only one of 10 vulnerabilities. So those 40,000 essentially are a very long tail. And threat actor groups were very lazy. They were using only 10 vulnerabilities that they were able to expose and access en masse. 50% of those were actually just 4 vulnerabilities. And the 4 vulnerabilities we have documented on the side. So Sonnet Wall, in fact, there's a new one from Sonnet Wall that's under active exposure right now. So that's been published in the last week or so. Citrix NetScaler, ConnectWise, and Palo Alto PanOS. So typically things that have external exposure on the public internet, things that might have admin credentials that are leaked on the dark web, and also things that are unpatched or people don't get around to patching because maybe they're mission critical, like Citrix NetScaler, for example. And so when we see these kinds of things, we ourselves call these mega events, and we pivot very, very hard, very quickly to protect our customers against it. And here's just an example of what we did with Sonnet Wall. In our customer base, we had over 2,000 customers at risk to that Sonnet Wall vulnerability. We don't make Sonnet Wall technology. We're not responsible for the software and the maintenance and the upkeep of it. However, there were 2,000 at-risk customers, which we needed to be able to protect very, very quickly. So we disclosed the vulnerability, and we understood what that expansion was going to be. Sonnet Wall confirmed our exploit understanding. So we found that vulnerability, that critical vulnerability in the customer base. We published it and escalated it. We were able to protect those 2,000 customers. We also found 147 of those 2,000 were literally being attacked as we were building those IOCs and TTPs. So we were building them in real time, deploying in the platform, rolling them out to 2,000 plus customers, and we found 147 of them actively under attack as it was happening. So we were able to pivot, do fast response, and actually close them down and help customers out with it as well. But we published all these TTPs online. We took all our threat research, we published it, we made blogs of it, and you can find webinars online of all of that information as well. Okay, so some key takeaways for you. So I guess the key takeaways really are that, yes, you're hearing an awful lot about artificial intelligence generated threats. We as vendors are using AI for marketing purposes an awful lot these days, to be quite frank with you. And yeah, AI, generative AI is helping threat actor groups with things like, kind of manipulating users in terms of very, very good email phishing, and also doing kind of voice mimicking and video mimicking. Yes, that is happening. However, threat actor groups, the large scale groups that are trying to do this as a service, are essentially embracing low-level, low-tech ways to bypass your defenses. If you've got a strong EDR in your endpoint, they're not going to come after your endpoint. They're going to go after your VMware environment, because your VMware environment doesn't have any EDR protection on it. And that's what they did with M&S, and that's what they did with MGM. And also, if they can get access to your environment through an unpatched vulnerability within your firewall and VPN, that's what they're going to do, because now they've got complete admin rights and they can dump credentials and then move laterally. The ransomware landscape is a modern day Hydra. So you cut the head off one snake, 3 others will pop up, because it is an extortion group. It is a business model. Organizations now sell their software for other threat actor groups to use. So Scattered Spider are using a third-party technology to be able to do that today. So there are many interlinked organizations that are relying on each other to deliver these threat actor services. 3 cyber incident types accounted for all of those 95% of IR cases. And prioritized patching can help you prevent the intrusions, but you've got to know what to patch. And that's part of the problem. Is there's so much noise and there's so many vulnerabilities and there's so many things that we're being dragged into. Alert fatigue is a real thing. It's how can we get to the right thing really, really quickly? So the best things that you can do: understand your attack surface, right? Have a really, really good asset inventory. Contrast that with your approved software list. What do you have out there within your organization? What do you have running on kind of user devices? What do you have on people that are working off the network? Also, Jeff, you talked about supply chain risk. Yeah, absolutely. That's a real thing. Organizations of all sizes need to understand what the risk is from their supply chain and what organizations are doing from a protection level and how that's going to affect you should they have an issue. Do not expose management interfaces to the internet. And don't leave them with default credentials, right? Do make sure that you're not reusing passwords. Don't have default credentials out there, and don't have management interfaces on the internet, even for things like your VMware environment, for example. Make sure that they are completely isolated. Do put them on a separate VLAN. Do physically segregate them if you can, and do rotate those passwords if you believe that you think that you could be exposed. You do need broad visibility and monitoring 24/7. Endpoint protection is not enough. Don't rely on your EDR to protect you, because it's only going to protect your endpoint. And as we've seen, threat actor groups are not coming after the endpoint. They're coming after all other facets of your organization. So you have to protect your cloud. You have to protect your 365. You have to get complete holistic visibility and monitoring. And that's one of the core tenets of what ArcticWolf does. So finally, develop incident response plans to minimize the impact of an attack. Make sure you have that defined. Make sure you have it documented. We at ArcticWolf, we have an incident response capability. We sell out incident response as a service. We will build your plan for you and document it. We're going to release something new next week, which means that we will also run tabletops with you if you want us to run tabletops as a service. So if you want a comprehensive incident response as a service, we have an offering that you can take very easy, very quickly, and it's going to be best of breed. Develop a vulnerability management plan that very importantly addresses the most exploited vulnerabilities. So don't go worrying about the long tail. Understand what the categorized and customized risk exposure is to your organization. Don't go chasing 3,000 vulnerabilities and worry about what's going to be patched and when. Focus on the most impactful and how it's going to move the business forward. ArcticWolf, we have a service called Manage Risk, which does that for you. We have a completely customized endpoint, network, cloud, dark web vulnerability management as a service capability. Enforce the controls on your identity. Push MFA everywhere. In fact, if you can move to biometrics, even better. Make sure that you've got MFA on your external devices, such as access to your firewalls and your VPNs and your cloud services. And then finally, it's all about establishing and continually fostering your culture of security across the business. Humans, you hear, are the weakest link. That's not true. Humans care about security of the organization they work for. They want to be involved. Don't penalize them if something is going wrong. Make sure they understand that why it's important about security, why they all play a role, how we continually reinforce a strong message of security, and what their role is in protecting your organization as well.